If you're listening to this right now, maybe the house is quiet, the day is done, the lights are low, and the only sound is the steady rhythmic ticking of a clock somewhere in the room. Tick, tick, tick. And it's a comforting sound, really, because it implies order.
Right.
It implies that as long as the gears are wound and the pendulum swings, the machine will just keep running indefinitely. But inside your cells, there is a completely different clock.
Yeah, a very different one.
A biological clock that is ticking away in a much more finite way. And tonight we're going to talk about how science has figured out a way to not just pause that cellular clock, but actually make it tick backward.
It's a beautiful illusion, right? The idea of perpetual motion.
Yeah.
We look at a grandfather clock and think it's static. But underneath that polished wooden cabinet, microscopic wear and tear is happening with every single swing of the pendulum. The brass is oxidizing, the lubricants are drying out, the gears are grinding down by fractions of a millimeter, and our biology is incredibly similar.
It is. Welcome to Science After Dark. Tonight, we are settling in for a deep dive into the ultimate ticking clock, the human body.
Yeah.
We're exploring the ancient quest for eternal youth, and more importantly, the rigorous, fascinating, and often, I think, misunderstood science of longevity. I'm glad you're here with us on the night shift.
Our mission tonight is to gently strip away the neon lights and the loud marketing of the multi-billion-dollar anti-aging industry.
Oh, absolutely.
We want to look at the actual biology underneath the hood.
Yeah.
We're going to explore what aging fundamentally is at a cellular level, why it happens in the first place, and what we can, genuinely scientifically do about it.
We really need to draw that line in the sand, too. Because the gap between what has been biologically proven in a laboratory and what is currently marketed to us on store shelves and shiny bottles, that is arguably the widest gap in all of science.
Without a doubt. So to bridge that gap, we first have to understand the mechanics of aging. We tend to think of aging as a singular shadow that slowly falls over us. But scientifically, aging is not a single disease. It is a cascade of very specific, accumulating cellular and molecular failures.
Like the gears grinding down.
Exactly like that. And the most influential framework for understanding this breakdown is known as the hallmarks of aging. Scientists have categorized 12 distinct hallmarks, and they're grouped into 3 stages.
Okay, so what's the first stage?
First, you have the primary hallmarks. These are the direct initial insults to your biology. Things like genomic instability, where your DNA literally accumulates damage over time, or epigenetic alterations, where the chemical switches that turn your genes on and off start to glitch and lose their programming.
Okay, let's unpack this. That's the initial damage. But the body doesn't just sit there and take it, right?
It doesn't, and that brings us to the second stage, which are the antagonistic hallmarks.
Okay.
These are the body's responses to that initial damage. The body tries to defend itself, but over decades, those defense mechanisms backfire.
Oh, I see.
A classic example is mitochondrial dysfunction. The tiny powerhouses of your cells try to adapt to cellular stress, but eventually the strain is too much and they just start producing toxic byproducts instead of clean energy.
Which leads us to the third category then, the integrative hallmarks.
Yeah.
This is the end result.
Yes.
The music stops. This is the chronic inflammation, the exhaustion of our stem cells, the joint pain, all the things we actually physically feel as we get older.
Precisely. Now, out of all 12 of these hallmarks, one has captured the public's imagination more than any other, and that's telomere attrition. Telomeres are the protective caps on the very ends of our chromosomes.
The classic analogy here is that telomeres are like aglets, those little plastic tips on the ends of your shoelaces that keep them from fraying.
That's an excellent way to visualize them. Decades ago, researchers discovered that human cells don't just divide forever. They have a hard biological limit, roughly 50 to 70 divisions, before they just stop. Every single time a cell divides, that little plastic tip, the telomere, gets a tiny bit shorter. When it gets too short, the cell realizes it's in danger of fraying its actual DNA, so it pulls the emergency brake. It stops dividing.
And there was a massive breakthrough in this area, right? The discovery of an enzyme called telomerase that actually rebuilds those telomeres.
Yes.
Which ended up winning a Nobel Prize. It sounded like the silver bullet for cellular immortality. But wait, hold on. Let's keep our 12 hallmarks in mind here.
Right.
If telomeres are just the plastic tips on our shoelaces, and telomere shortening is just one hallmark out of 12, aren't we just taping up the shoelace while the actual sole of the shoe falls apart?
You're hitting on the exact realization the scientific community had to come to terms with.
Yeah.
Telomere length is a very imperfect clock. You can have incredibly long telomeres and still age rapidly due to the other 11 hallmarks tearing your biology apart.
Wow, okay.
Which brings us to another critical piece of the puzzle. One of those antagonistic hallmarks we mentioned, cellular senescence.
The zombie cells.
The zombie cells. So when a cell reaches its division limit or experiences severe stress, it's supposed to quietly dismantle itself and be cleared away by the immune system. But sometimes they refuse to die. They enter a state called senescence. They stop dividing, but they remain metabolically active. And what's worse, they start secreting an inflammatory sludge. Just a cocktail of toxic chemical signals.
It's like they're panicking and sending out biological distress signals that end up poisoning the healthy, functioning cells around them.
That is the precise mechanism. And as we age, our immune system gets tired. It gets much worse at clearing these zombie cells out.
So they just build up.
Yeah, they accumulate.
Yeah.
And their inflammatory sludge is now heavily linked to the miseries of aging. Things like arthritis, atherosclerosis, neurodegeneration, they are essentially polluting the tissue.
So we have all these microscopic breakdowns, telomeres fraying, zombie cells polluting the tissue, DNA mutating. It forces a fundamental question. We all started as a single microscopic cell. That one cell knew how to build a brain, a beating heart, an entire skeletal system. If the body has the blueprint to build something that complex from absolute scratch, why on earth does it forget how to maintain it?
That is the most profound question in longevity science. And the answer comes from evolutionary biology. Aging is not a programmed destiny. There is no biological death gene ticking away inside you. Aging is simply the accumulation of unrepaired damage because evolution deliberately underinvests in maintenance.
Wait, evolution deliberately ignores the damage. Why would it do that?
Well, it comes down to two core theories in biology. The first is antagonistic pleiotropy.
Antagonistic pleiotropy.
Right. Evolution only really cares about one thing, passing on genes to the next generation. So if a genetic trait helps you grow fast, survive predators, and reproduce early in life, natural selection will heavily favor it.
Even if it's bad for you later.
Exactly. Even if that exact same trait causes cancer or heart disease when you're 80, evolution is completely blind to what happens to you after you've successfully passed on your genes.
It's a harsh biological trade-off.
It really is. The second theory is the disposable soma theory. Soma means body. The idea here is that every organism lives in a dangerous world of limited resources.
All right.
You only have so much energy from the food you eat. You have to budget that energy between reproducing and maintaining your body.
So basically, if you're a mouse in the wild, you're probably going to get eaten by an owl or a snake within a year anyway.
Exactly.
It makes zero evolutionary sense to invest precious metabolic energy into building a mouse body that can last for 50 years. You'd be wasting energy on maintenance when you should be spending it on breeding before the owl gets you.
That's the underlying logic. Evolution invests just enough energy into cellular maintenance to get an organism through its natural reproductive years. After that, the soma, your body, is biologically disposable.
It sounds exactly like planned obsolescence in smartphones.
Yep.
Evolution gives us a warranty that strictly covers our reproductive years. So if you're listening to this and your knees crack when you stand up or your back aches in the morning, you are officially off warranty. The manufacturer has stopped sending software updates, and we are entirely on our own.
I love that analogy. It's so true. But it holds a very optimistic silver lining.
Oh.
If aging is just a byproduct of an evolutionary energy budget rather than a fixed, rigid countdown timer, well, that means it's modifiable. We can hack the budget.
And scientists have been trying to hack that budget for a long time, haven't they?
Since the 1930s, at least. That's when researchers ran a legendary experiment. They took rats and simply restricted their daily calories by 30 to 40% while making sure they still got all their essential vitamins and nutrients.
Okay.
Those hungry rats lived up to 50% longer than the normal rats.
50%. That's a massive extension. But how does just eating less make you live longer?
It triggers a deep survival mechanism called autophagy. Auto meaning self and phagy meaning eating.
Self-eating. Okay.
When a cell is constantly bathed in nutrients, it gets lazy. It just focuses on growing and dividing. But when you restrict calories, the cell senses a scarcity of energy. It panics, stops prioritizing growth, and shifts its budget entirely into defense and maintenance. To survive, it starts looking around for internal fuel, and it begins literally eating its own cellular garbage.
Wow.
Misfolded proteins, old dysfunctional mitochondria.
So it's essentially a deep cleaning cycle for the cell's engine.
Yes. It clears out the gunk. It's the most robust longevity intervention ever discovered, replicated in yeast, worms, flies, and mice. But, of course, the big test was whether this works in something closer to us.
Right, because we aren't rats or fruit flies. What happened when they tried this on primates?
Well, they ran decades-long trials on rhesus monkeys, and the results were, complicated. One major study found that caloric restriction significantly reduced age-related deaths and disease in their monkeys. But another major parallel study found that while the restricted monkeys were definitely healthier, they didn't actually live significantly longer overall.
Why the discrepancy?
It came down to the diets of the control groups. The first group of monkeys on the normal diet were allowed to eat essentially unlimited, highly refined, sugary foods.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. The second group's monkeys were on a much healthier, naturally sourced diet to begin with. So the consensus now is that caloric restriction will undeniably improve your health span, the healthy, disease-free years of your life, but extreme lifespan extension in long-lived primates like us is highly debatable.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because nobody wants to starve themselves by 40% for their entire life just to maybe live a few extra years.
Right.
So the holy grail became, can we find a molecule, a pill, that mimics the biology of starvation, turning on that cellular deep clean without actually having to starve?
And that search leads us to one of the most fascinating stories in modern medicine, which is rapamycin. In the 1970s, scientists were analyzing a soil sample taken from Easter Island, known natively as Rapa Nui. Hidden in that dirt, they found a unique compound produced by bacteria. They called it rapamycin.
And what does this soil compound actually do inside a human body?
It inhibits a central nutrient-sensing pathway in our cells called mTOR.
mTOR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can think of mTOR as a general contractor for the cell. When mTOR is active, it tells the cell to build, grow, and multiply. Rapamycin effectively silences mTOR.
Oh, wow.
When you give rapamycin to a cell, the cell gets tricked into thinking nutrients are scarce even when they aren't. It triggers that deep cleaning autophagy we just talked about.
And the results were pretty staggering, right?
In massive, rigorous, federally funded trials, giving rapamycin to genetically diverse mice extended their lifespan by 9 to 14%. And incredibly, it worked even when they started the drug late in the mice's lives. It was the first time a drug reliably extended mammalian lifespan.
But let's look at the reality here. Rapamycin isn't some harmless over-the-counter supplement.
Yeah.
It is currently an FDA-approved immunosuppressant. It's used heavily to keep organ transplant patients from rejecting their new hearts or kidneys. Is the trade-off of suppressing your immune system, making yourself vulnerable to everyday infections, really worth a hypothetical 10% extension in lifespan for an otherwise healthy person?
This raises an important question, and it is the exact debate happening in the field right now. Its use for longevity in healthy people is highly experimental and fraught with potential side effects.
Yeah.
The dosage and the timing, like cycling on and off the drug, would have to be perfectly individually attuned to avoid tanking the immune system. That's why researchers are looking at other, gentler pathways to hack the budget, too.
Like metformin.
Yes, metformin is a dirt-cheap, incredibly common diabetes drug that's been used safely for decades. It also gently alters the cell's energy budget. There is currently a historic trial underway, the TAME trial, targeting aging with metformin. It's groundbreaking because it's the first trial specifically designed to see if a drug can delay the onset of a whole cluster of age-related diseases in humans who are currently healthy.
Metformin is a broad, generalized approach to changing the body's energy budget. But researchers are also looking at highly targeted assassins, which brings us back to those zombie cells.
Right, the senolytics. This is a whole new class of drugs designed to hunt. Researchers pioneered a combination of an anti-cancer drug and a plant pigment to act like targeted assassins. They selectively hunt down and kill those senescent zombie cells in mice, forcing them to finally die and be cleared away, which drastically drops the inflammation levels in the tissue.
It's incredible to think about what we might engineer in a lab. But sometimes I wonder if we're trying to invent something that nature has already perfected.
Yeah.
If we step out of the clinic and look out into the wild, the biological budget seems way more flexible than we give it credit for.
Nature is the ultimate laboratory, and it breaks all our assumptions. Take the naked mole rat. It's the size of a mouse. But while a standard mouse lives 2 or 3 years, a naked mole rat can live for 30 years.
That's wild.
And they are virtually immune to cancer. Their cellular maintenance is phenomenal. Or the bowhead whale. which swims the Arctic waters for over 200 years, repairing its massive body the whole time.
I read about the Greenland shark. They radiocarbon dated the lens of its eye recently.
They did, and they dated it to roughly 392 years old.
Unbelievable.
That means there is a vertebrate swimming in the dark, cold ocean today that might have been born before the telescope was even invented.
Wow.
And it goes further. An ocean quahog clam was dredged up off the coast of Iceland. They aged it by counting the rings on its shell, like a tree. It was 507 years old.
Which fundamentally proves the machinery of life doesn't have to break down quickly.
Precisely. The blueprint for extreme longevity already exists in nature, and we've proven we can manipulate it genetically. Decades ago, researchers altered a single specific gene in a microscopic roundworm.
Have one gene.
Just one tiny tweak doubled the worm's lifespan. The worm didn't just survive longer, it stayed youthful and energetic for twice as long. It proved aging is completely genetically modifiable.
But if we're going to modify it in humans, we have to know if it's actually working. We can't wait 100 years to see if a new pill or lifestyle change is effective. We need a speedometer for aging.
And we finally have one. It's called the epigenetic clock. Researchers discovered that by looking at hundreds of specific sites on our DNA and measuring the chemical tags attached to them, these are called DNA methylation marks. You can think of them as chemical sticky notes that tell the DNA what to do. They found they could predict a person's true biological age with stunning accuracy.
So not your chronological age, like how many birthdays you've had, but how old your cells actually act and function.
Yes. And having that biological speedometer allowed researchers to test the most sci-fi frontier of all, epigenetic reprogramming.
Okay.
The discovery here was that there are 4 specific transcription factors, now called the Yamanaka factors. If you apply these 4 factors to an adult cell, say a skin cell, it wipes its epigenetic memory completely clean.
Wow.
It forgets it was ever a skin cell and turns back into a raw embryonic stem cell.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like taking a computer with a highly specialized software program and formatting the hard drive back to its factory default settings.
Exactly.
The cell goes back to being a total blank slate, turning back the clock all the way to 0.
That's a perfect way to look at it. But you don't want to turn a living human being into a puddle of blank slate embryonic stem cells.
Oh, probably not.
So researchers tried something daring. They took mice with a premature aging disease and applied the Yamanaka factors, but only partially. Just a brief pulse.
Just giving the epigenetic clock a little nudge backward rather than formatting the whole hard drive.
And it worked. The mice aging markers reversed, their organs literally rejuvenated, and they lived longer.
That's amazing.
It was such a staggering result that a company called Altos Labs recently launched with $3 billion in backing, including money from tech billionaires, specifically to pursue cellular rejuvenation in humans.
But wait, if we partially reprogram a cell, how does it remember its job?
Right.
If you pulse a heart cell with these factors to reverse its age, how do we make sure it doesn't accidentally get wiped too clean, turn back into a blank slate, and just forget how to beat?
That is the $3 billion question. It is an incredibly delicate tightrope walk. If you pulse the factors for too long, the cell forgets its identity, grows out of control, and forms a tumor called a teratoma.
Oh, wow.
If you pulse it too briefly, nothing happens. The precision required to safely rejuvenate a complex human organ inside a living body without causing cancer is staggering, and we are nowhere near mastering it yet.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room. $3 billion is a massive gravity well amount of money, and wherever that kind of money flows, the line between groundbreaking science and expensive snake oil gets very, very blurry.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the cautionary tales in this field. Consider the story of resveratrol, a compound found in red wine.
Oh, yeah.
Years ago, a prominent lab reported that resveratrol extended the lifespan of yeast by activating cellular longevity pathways.
I remember this. Suddenly, everyone was justifying their evening red wine habits as a medical intervention.
It caused a massive media frenzy. A pharmaceutical company was founded based on this, and a giant pharmaceutical corporation bought it for over $700 million.
Wow.
But within a few years, they had completely shut it down. Resveratrol just failed to translate into a viable, effective longevity drug for humans.
And the hype hasn't stopped there, has it?
No. More recently, there's been a massive push for NAD+ precursors like NMN and NR. NAD+ is a critical molecule for cellular metabolism. It's like currency for the cell's energy, and it depletes as we age. The idea is that taking these precursors gives your body the raw materials to build more NAD plus such.
Which sounds logical on paper.
It does, but again, human trials proving they actually extend human lifespan are severely lacking, despite them being sold everywhere. Furthermore, a major, highly publicized paper that claimed to have achieved chemical reprogramming to reverse aging in mice was actually retracted shortly after publication over serious concerns with the data.
It's a reminder that hype often sprints miles ahead of the actual evidence.
We have to differentiate between lifespan and health span. The realistic near-term goal of all this legitimate science isn't immortality. It is compressing morbidity.
What does that mean exactly?
It's taking the period of frailty and disease that usually occupies the last 10 or 15 years of our lives and compressing it down to a few months or weeks at the very end.
So you live healthier, fully functional, and then you just sort of switch off quickly rather than fading away over a decade.
Exactly the goal, because despite everything we've talked about today, the verified, undisputed record for human lifespan is still held by a French woman named Jeanne Calment.
Right.
She lived to be 122 years and 164 days old. And she did that without Yamanaka factors, without rapamycin, and without expensive supplements.
So what does this all mean for us tonight? We've talked about billions of dollars, Nobel Prizes, exotic soil from Easter Island, and genetically modified worms. But the deep irony of this entire field is that right now, the only definitively proven longevity drugs for human beings are incredibly boring.
What's fascinating here is that the most potent interventions we have are entirely mundane, but we now know why they worked biologically. Eating a sensible diet without constantly grazing doesn't just keep weight off. It allows your metabolic pathways to rest and occasionally triggers that cellular deep clean autophagy.
And exercise.
Consistent physical exercise acts as a mild stressor, which signals your body to maintain its muscle and bone density rather than letting the soma degrade.
Makes sense.
And then there's sleep. 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep isn't just rest. It activates the glymphatic system in your brain, literally washing away the toxic amyloid beta proteins that accumulate during the day.
Wow.
And of course, absolutely not smoking, which avoids introducing massive amounts of that primary DNA damage we talked about at the start.
It's sobering, but honestly, it's also deeply empowering. You don't need a billionaire's bank account or a tech bro's supplement stack to activate your body's maintenance budget today.
We have learned that aging isn't a fixed, inevitable destiny. It's a biological process that we can measure, that we can slow down, and perhaps one day meaningfully reverse. The question is no longer if aging can be understood, it's how far that understanding is going to take us in the next few decades.
But before we close out tonight, I want to pose one final thought. We've been talking about the biology of replacing our disposable soma with a body capable of indefinite maintenance. Yeah, but if we eventually do cure aging, how will human psychology handle the burden of infinity?
That's a huge question.
Think about it. Our entire existence, our entire culture, is structured around the scarcity of time. Without the ticking clock of mortality, without that inherent pressure, would we ever feel the urgency to create art, to fall in love, or to accomplish anything at all?
Or we just perpetually delay life because there's always tomorrow.
That is a profoundly strange thought to end the night on. A world with infinite time, but perhaps no urgency to live it. Thank you for staying up with us to explore the edges of human biology. We hope you get some excellent cellular clearing sleep tonight. Until next time, this has been Science After Dark. Listen to that clock ticking in the hallway, and maybe, just for tonight, appreciate the rhythm. Good night.